Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first live on behalf of Wines of Portugal. This will be a series of 4 lives. And just before I carry on, can you guys hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up. Excellent. So we're going to do 4 masterclasses on behalf of Wines of Portugal. Thank you for the great opportunity. Also for the support in terms of getting information, all the statistics that we're going to share with you, also the wines. And this session is designed to appeal for people who, maybe some winemakers who wants to hear from some of the best winemaker, one of the great winemakers, which is Paulo Nunes, but also people who study wine, people who sell wine, and people who enjoy wine. It'll be something from everyone. I want to discuss and in more detail with Paulo, talk about viticulture, talk about winemaking, talking about terroir, and also sales, marketing, and how to enjoy wines. So I hope you, please send your questions, and I'm going to find Paulo Nunes in a second. Just give me a wave, Paulo. And Paulo, give me a wave and I'll connect you. There we go. So to Paulo, if you join us, we'll start talking about. Hey, we are.
Hello. Fine, and you? Everything
Great.
okay?
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for joining us in this first masterclass. We're going to talk about Touriga Nacional. And for those of you who don't know Paulo Nunes, for me, is one of the most talented young winemakers in Portugal.
It's my friend, Dirceu. I pay to Dirceu to say that.
But we're going to. Paulo is from Douro. He was born in Douro, and he's been making wine since 2003. But the great thing to talk to Paulo today is because he works in many different regions, including Down, Douro, Trás-os-Montes, and also from Bairrada, so he gives a good overview of everything. He's also winemaker of the year twice by 2 different publications in Portugal, and I'm not sure if anyone else ever hold the same title by the two different magazines.
No, I think I am the first, but
You're the first, so
it's well, not important. It's not important.
It is important to show how good and how diligent you are. And I think the last time I was thinking this afternoon, Paulo, the last time where I saw you, I think it was on a stage, and I was giving you the award for the best variety wine in 2019 in Portugal.
The last Viticulture award. Yeah.
Exactly. But today we're not talking. It was then Cruzado, but today we're talking about Touriga Nacional.
Okay, it's a good variety, of course.
Paulo, first question. Touriga Nacional is probably the most celebrated variety. It's a flagship of Portugal. It's one of the best known varieties. In your opinion, is it really the best red grape variety of Portugal?
I'm not sure it's the best, because the best is, when you talk about the best, the only one is absolutely, and I don't believe in that in the viticulture and the wines, but I am sure it's one of the best grapes we have, and it's for sure about that. It's very important historically.
So if you're doing a list of 3 or 4, it will certainly be there.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course, because you can find Touriga Nacional always in Portugal, in Douro, in Tejo. We don't have a lot of grapes in Portugal with that capacity to have always present in always regions. We don't have a lot of grapes in Portugal with that capacity, of course.
Excellent. In terms of, let's talk first about viticulture briefly. In terms of viticulture, Paulo, what are the main advantages of having of Touriga Nacional in general in the field?
Well, you know, it's a very old grape variety, and usually that means a great adaptation of that grape variety to the terroir. And this great adaptation explains why it is a grape variety used in many different regions in Portugal. It is used almost all regions, as I said. And it is a robust variety, and it's very, very resistant to disease. And that is very important to producer, of course. For me, it's a very, very good advantage. It's that resistance to have to disease.
Okay. And to the other side, what are the main disadvantages?
Well, I think the main problem, the Touriga Nacional, it solved a few years ago, luckily. And the main problem was in the past the capacity to regulate to production levels. And in fact, Touriga Nacional has in the past that problem, the capacity to good productions every year. And but I think it's solved with a better viticulture today, and using different clones also. And that big problem, of course, it is resolved, in my opinion.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know, I think it's good to give a little bit of background. But Touriga Nacional today is the third most planted grape varieties of Portugal. It has 12,143 hectares, just behind Tinta Ruiz and Touriga Franca.
Yeah.
I think it's possibly it's from down itself, from a town called Touriga, which is a district of Viseu. And interesting to know that in the 19th century, this is going to surprise some people. In the 19th centuries, it was accounted, it depends which book you read, but between 95 and 100% of the red varieties of down.
Yeah, yeah.
So it dominated down. But one thing is, and then you go to the 20th century, it was almost it was 5%.
Yeah.
So it decreased very rapidly. The reason what Paulo was explaining is to do with yields. And more important, and I think this is really going to surprise people, is in the 70s, it accounted for 0.1% of the Douro area of plantings, which means it was almost extinct. And if it wasn't for this group of professionals who studied and who did amazing research in terms of increasing the yield, because the yield per plant at the time was less than a kilo. So I think the whole research that Paulo is referring to is to do with increasing yield. So if it wasn't for that study, probably wouldn't be here talking about Touriga Nacional today.
Yeah.
But interesting, and I'm going to be grateful to Sofia Salvador who helped me, and all the people from Wine Portugal who helped me with some statistics. Because it's interesting to see that in year 2000, there was just over 1,600 hectares planted. And then we moved to 10 years later, it was 4,600 hectares planted in the Douro.
Yeah, it's
so
amazing.
You see how the evolution was so quickly. And today, as I mentioned, it's 12,143 hectares. So it's a big, and it's planted all over Portugal now. I think this is good to put in context. So I want to also ask you about also in the vineyard. So it's quite disease resistant and adaptable and so on. But does it require any special care in the vineyard?
Yeah, maybe it's the big problem, the big careful you must have today. It's the period of floration. That period is very critical to that variety, because some years with some rain, we have the production, small production, because the flowering is the critical period of that grape. and that means we must have aeration in in canopy. It's essential because I believe when you said more 100 years ago, down, the system of conduction of down is not the same today. That is prephyloxera, 95% of down it is Touriga Nacional, and we don't. It's free condition, free the condition of the plant, and that means it's the best way to growing the grapes, and is the critical period for me. It's the floration of that grape.
Apart from that, there's not much care needed.
No,
it behaves like all the varieties.
No, we don't have any problem. It's very resistant to rain, to botrytis. It's very resistant. We don't have problems after that.
Okay. In terms of, does it give better results if it's in mass-style selection, mixed plantings, or if it's clones selection?
It is a big question because it's very controversial that question. I believe that the coexistence of both it's very important. For example, you talk about a few minutes ago, you talk about the clone. Some people's salvage because Touriga Nacional have a lot of problems. Some clones with production. The select of clones are increase the production levels, and that save the grape. But in the other hand, you have a lot of old vines. It means we have a lot of variability genetic. Okay, if you have that variability genetic, you don't know if you have in that place a different clone, a different plant to give some fantastic character. I think you must have the two systems. We need the selection of clones, but the old vines, the producer have some plants, and that plants maybe it's unique.
Okay. There's someone's mentioning about old vines. Interesting question there. Also, I've seen some other questions about grape varieties, Touriga planted elsewhere. We're gonna get to that in a second. But the previous question, someone mentioned vine age. So can we? Is it possible to compare a young vine and a 40-year-old vine in terms of yield and also in terms of quality of the fruit?
Of course, certainly is totally different because the old vine it's more regular. It is not conditioned by the weather conditions of specific year. And young vineyards, it's very. If you have warm summer, for example, you don't feel that in old vines. You don't feel the stress hydric, for example, and the young vines. You feel that, and of course, it's totally different. But
on the wine itself, do you feel more density, more weight on the old vines? More concentrated?
Yeah, more concentrated, more acidity. Keep the acidity, the old vines better than the young vines, and that is one reason I believe some regions in the future will arrive with the best wines from Touriga Nacional, because Touriga Nacional it's very recent. The vines it's very young yet in some regions in Portugal. When we have vines with more aging, maybe we have fantastic Touriga Nacional in wines from another regions in Portugal.
There's a question from someone. From a good friend of both of us about the profile of down and of Touriga style and down and Douro, etc. Do you wanna? Maybe we'll answer when we have. I have three wines with me. Maybe we'll have a chat today in about 5 minutes or so. But there was another question, Paul. I don't know if you can help. Is there Touriga Nacional planted outside the Iberian Peninsula?
Sorry, I don't listen now.
Is there Touriga Nacional planted? What do we know about Touriga Nacional planted outside the Iberian Peninsula?
Well,
outside Portugal and Spain.
Well, in Spain, in the United States, and Australia also. And I remember at South Africa, for example, I taste from South Africa, and it's amazing because in the blind taste, I don't, maybe it is Touriga Nacional from Portugal, in the blind taste. That is, it's amazing in that grape. It's the capacity to keep the personality. It's amazing. When you work in the United States, you work in another country in the world, another place, and you know, that is Touriga Nacional. It's amazing.
Yeah, I know. There is some in Priorat, still in the Iberian Peninsula, but there is some really good examples in California, in Washington, in Virginia. You mentioned Australia. I think Sun Hullet in Barossa Valley is an interesting wine. I know there's some planted in Brazil. The best example that I found from Brazil is the Quinta da Neve in Santa Catarina, which is high altitude. And I think Anselmo Mendes was advising that, and the wine was really interesting. Not as exuberant as you may think a Brazilian wine is, but it's more restrained, more backwards, almost like a down, really elegant. And also, the best example I've tasted of Touriga Nacional from outside Portugal was from Vinalba in Argentina.
Okay, and I forget in Chile, I have a good friend planting Touriga Nacional.
Okay.
In Chile also.
What else? I think that's it. I think Zuccardi had somebody, for some reason they decided to uproot. So those are all the wines that I know of Touriga Nacional from outside Portugal. But again, I think the best examples that I've tasted are from Portugal. What else can we talk about? Somebody's talking about oak treatment. We're gonna talk about winemaking in a second. Let's talk about. I think someone mentioned as a very good question. It's quite tricky to pick Touriga. Is it tricky to find the picking date of Touriga Nacional? What's the secret?
We don't have secrets in Portugal. Well, that is a good advantage to pick Touriga Nacional when you choose the day. It's a good advantage from Touriga Nacional. Why? Some grapes, you know, if you don't have the perfect day, the perfect day is today. If you lost the perfect day, tomorrow is too late. And yesterday, forget. Don't work. It's the window of the peak. It's very, very, very short. And Touriga Nacional don't happen that. Touriga Nacional, the window is not a small window. It's a door. It's big. And when you pick Touriga Nacional, for example, with 12 degrees probably alcohol, you have character of Touriga Nacional. But if you pick after 1 week, 2 weeks, okay, you have more structured, you have more powerful, but it's Touriga Nacional. We don't. It's not super maturation. No, you feel freshness also, and that is a good advantage to Touriga from Touriga Nacional, of course.
It behaves almost like Malbec also has a very big opportunity for picking. It's less so with Pinot. Also, talking about white rice, Sauvignon Blanc is a very short window. Pinot Noir. So it's quite forgiving in that respect. It's opposite
to Pinot Noir. If you lost the day, Pinot Noir, forget. Next year think about next winter, next harvest. Think about that.
See if anyone has any more questions in terms of viticulture. Then, otherwise, I'm gonna move into talking about terroir itself.
Okay.
There was a question earlier about terroir in terms of if we can establish the profile of Down and Douro. But before we answer that question, I think it was from Luis Lopez. How does let's talk about not the terroir in general, let's talk just about the climate itself. How does it behave how does Touriga Nacional behave in different climates?
Well, the best answer I have to you, it is when you taste the wines from different places in Portugal. From Alentejo it's too warm, from Douro it's too a little warm, down it's more fresh. And but you can find Touriga Nacional, fantastic wines from Touriga Nacional from different regions in Portugal, from more cold, more warm. That I think is the answer to question. The wine can prove that different climate and fantastic answer to Touriga Nacional.
And the same question: how does it behave in different types of soil?
Well, look at we have Touriga Nacional, for example, in granitic soil in Down. We have in clay, for example. We have in schist, for example, and is the same answer I said to you. We have some wines from granitic, fantastic wines. We have some wines from schist, fantastic wines. From clay, fantastic wines. It's Touriga Nacional. Sometimes I'm joking with that, and I think don't care about the soil, don't care about nothing about the soil because work very well in granite clay schist. It's fantastic to that. It's not selective.
But is that now going back to Luis Lopez's question? Is that a profile? If you're doing a blind tasting, can you okay? Now talking about climate and soil and everything else altogether, is there a way of saying, oh, this is from Casas Montes, or this is from Douro, or this is from what are the and someone also talk about Paul was asking a question about a question to you, the main flavors and aroma of Touriga Nacional. So I think we can answer this question together with this question that I just posed to you now in terms of the profile. How can we
it's in the noise. It's in my opinion, it's very floral, but you can find some kinds of Touriga Nacional, citric, orange, something like that, but very floral in the noise. Violet, a lot of violet. Some in some places more warm. You can find more violet, in my opinion.
So you got warmer floral notes.
Yeah.
And as you in warmer climates.
Yeah, in warm. Yeah.
Okay. I would have thought the opposite, but it's interesting to learn that.
Yeah. It's. I think we have three. It's my opinion, of course. I think we have three different groups. It's Touriga Nacional, but I think we have in Portugal three different groups of Touriga Nacional. Okay. In my opinion, we have a place more warm, and more warm is more structured, more powerful. It is Alentejo inside of Portugal until Douro. We have Down, more granitic, and we have the Touriga Nacional from Atlantic place, more fresh, more delicate, and you can feel the difference between three different groups, in my opinion, from Touriga Nacional in Portugal.
Okay.
But it's always, you can find it's always Touriga Nacional.
I've got here, talking about it, I've got in front of me, I've got three wines actually I've opened. This is the first one.
Yeah, it's a fantastic wine. Yeah.
It's from Alentejo. And it really shows what you just mentioned in terms of warmth. It really exuberant. It's juicy, it's ripe, it's got lots of fruits. It comes from the sub-region of Vidigueira. I think it's between Serra do Meandro and the Guadiana River, and a very rocky soil, some schist and some pebbles, quite rocky. And this is just from a single vineyard, sustainably grown, very simply made. It's just the stem crushed and fermented in ox, and very gentle extraction, and spent 8 months in oak. 95% is French oak and 5% is American oak. There was a question about oak. We're going to talk about oak in a second, but this is it really shows what you just described, Paul, in terms of warmth and generosity and exuberance.
Yeah.
So I think we cover most of viticulture and terroir. Let's get into the cellar now and talk about Touriga Nacional in the cellar. So what are the advantages of Touriga Nacional in the cellar?
Well, I think the fantastic advantage the winemaker have in the cellar, it is the versatility in vinification. It's not an oxidative variety. It brings comfort to winemaker, of course. It's not oxidative, and it's very versatility. But that is a good advantage. But sometimes it's the disadvantage. Why? Sometimes I talk about that, and you can make a Touriga Nacional like a Ferrari or a truck. The Touriga Nacional, it's possible to make a Ferrari, and it's possible to make a truck. But you make a Ferrari for highway, okay? Don't forget that. Ferrari, it's to highway. And Touriga Nacional is that, in my opinion. Touriga Nacional, it's so strong, so impositive in the vinification. You must be careful with extraction. Must be careful because it's strong. It's too much sometimes, and it's fantastic to winemaker, because if you have patience, you have maybe you have a fantastic wine, of course. Sometimes I said in Touriga Nacional, less is more, and it's good. Think about that. Less is more.
When you're talking about less is more, you're talking about less extraction and less oak and so on. Just be gentle.
Less extraction, fundamentally.
I want to talk about that as a very important point. I think extraction is I think it's almost everything in Touriga. But in terms of disadvantages in the cellar, what are they?
The advantage?
Disadvantages.
Disadvantage. Okay, disadvantage. The extraction problem. It's possible a problem. Over extraction. It's for me. It's maybe is the most important problem. Is the over extraction. Don't have sometimes. For example, another grapes, we have the problem the full tank. For example, if you don't have the full tank in another grape, if you have some hair inside of tank in another grape, it's okay. It's oxidative. It's a big problem. In Touriga Nacional, don't happen that, because normally Touriga Nacional, the pH it's down, the acidity it's very high normally, more than another grapes, and that conserve the process of oxidation away.
Someone mentioned, I'm sure, I don't know who it was, but there is danger of I don't want to get too technical, but people want to be technical. Is there a danger of Brettanomyces and VA?
Yeah, but yeah, it is a problem. It is a problem, but in my opinion, is not the problem of Brettanomyces is more because maybe it's one of the most problem we have. It's the making the second fermentation.
Okay.
The malolatic fermentation normally is the last happen in Touriga Nacional. I have my opinion. It is because normally Touriga Nacional is one of the last we pick in the vineyard. If it is one of the last, we have the temperature increase, sorry, and the malolatic fermentation is more hard to make the malolatic fermentation. When we don't have the malolatic fermentation, you don't have any protection in the wine. And normally, the malolatic fermentation happen after the winter, in the April, May, and we don't have any protection in that wine until April, May. And in my opinion, that is the big reason we have some problems in the past with bread. But today, I think today the problem is controlled.
Okay. And is it any in your opinion, is it better? What are the differences? What is better in terms of vinification? Is it vinified in stainless steel, in lagar, in cement, or in oak?
Do you remember Ferrari or the truck? I personally, I prefer the stainless or cement closures, of course, because lagar it's probably more aggressive to extract. Less time, lagar, more action. It's fantastic for port wine, for example, lagar, because it's in terms of extraction, it's very aggressive. But if you make a Touriga Nacional and you can control the process of vinification, the extraction, it's more comfortable if you work in my opinion, in the cement tank or stainless steel.
Okay. I want to ask questions about market and stuff. But there's so many questions coming in. There was a good question early on. It's talking about mostly about how to enjoy Touriga Nacional, and I'm going to read it for you. Which grape would you say is closer to Touriga? I assume any international grape, classic grape variety, and also really which grape is closer to Touriga Nacional, and also really known by the Brazilian consumer in terms of taste. Basically, what is it comparable to?
Yeah, that is a hard question. I talk a lot of times with another winemakers, another colleague, and we don't find another grape to compare it. For example, sometimes I compare it, for example, it's easy, compare it Bastardo with Pinot, or sometimes the Alfrocheiro with Pinot, for example, but I don't find any grape similar to Touriga Nacional. Touriga Nacional is Touriga Nacional.
Yeah, I agree. I agree to an extent because it is unique. It has, somebody asked about the profile of Touriga Nacional. It's got wonderful dark fruits, bergamots, violets, rosemary sometimes, dried herbs.
Yeah.
So it's got lots of flavor. It's got a very firm structure. You have to be careful, as Paulo mentioned, in terms of extraction. It's got lovely acidity. It's got everything. And it's a very distinct profile. So I agree, but also I would suggest for consumer who enjoy, especially Shiraz, consumer who enjoy, because they are rich and exuberant varieties. Consumers who enjoy, in Brazil, they enjoy Malbec. Again, opulent. I think Touriga is that, plus more elegance and more floral notes and so on. So I think it would work. If you like richer Rhone blends, I would think have a go at Touriga. I think you'll be surprised.
Yeah.
Petit Syrah also. What else? Even some Cabernet blends. I know it's not similar, but I'm talking about the profile to be. I'm just trying to guide consumers to try Touriga Nacional. So I think if people like those rich, fruit-forward styles of wine, I think Touriga will surprise them. Um, and there was a question earlier on. It was a good question about Touriga Nacional and oak. So what is I know when you did your masters was something to do with oak treatment in white wine. But
Yeah.
I'm sure you use that for you can use that for your red wine making. So what did you learn? Going back to your masters, what did you learn that you can apply into the red wine making? And then the follow-on question from there, it's what is the relation between Touriga Nacional and oak?
It's for me. It's one of the fantastic relationship with oak is Touriga Nacional. Why? It's normally Touriga Nacional. It's very rich in polyphenolic components. Normally, it's very rich, and normally preserve the acidic component. When we have the rich of polyphenolic, and we have the rich of acidity, that implies an excellent relationship with oak. And Touriga Nacional, I just use, for example, in Down, the new oak in Touriga Nacional.
Okay.
New oak just in Touriga, in the red grapes, just in Touriga Nacional. It's Touriga Nacional. It's so strong, the character, and it's very strong and can fight with the just fight its fear with new oak. It's for me it's a good relationship, but if you want more floral, for example, it's very fantastic in the used oak, for example. That have it's plastic. It's have the capacity to different agings, new oak, old oak. It's good, but in my opinion, in my case, I just I just use in Touriga Nacional new oak in Down, for example.
Okay. There was a question early on about blending. What are Touriga Nacional's? I'm going to keep that for a second. But in your opinion, is Touriga Nacional better as a single variety or as a blending component? Before we go answer the next question, which somebody asked.
Yeah, it's a good question. Certainly, it's a complete variety. Why? If you put 100% in the bottle, it's complete grape. Because if it's not complete grape, you don't put 100% in the bottle. You make the blend. And look at, we have a lot of wines in Portugal from Douro, from Down, from Alentejo, wins many awards in the big conquest in the world. Have a good scores in the last years in the Parker, for example. Okay, if you have that scores in 100% varietal, means it's a fantastic grape. It's a complete grape, and that is the reason big producers from high quality in Portugal put Touriga Nacional 100% in bottle. But of course, it's good when you make the blend. But the character of Touriga Nacional in blend. It's amazing because you put just a small quantity, 10-15%, for example, in the blend, and you understand when you smell the wine. Okay, here have Touriga Nacional. Just with 10%, it's amazing with character.
Interesting. You know, Paul, I was thinking about, I was listening to what you said, and early on, I made a pretty big mistake. When people ask where is Touriga Nacional planted, I think both of us, we said, okay, South Africa, there's a producer called the Crans, etc. And we went most places that I could remember. And I think somebody mentioned that we didn't talk about Bordeaux.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's since for most of you would know, some people who maybe don't know, but since 2019, 7 varieties have been allowed to be planted in Bordeaux, including Touriga Nacional, and they have done studies. I think since 2003 or since early 2000s for sure, to look for grapes that are adaptable to climate change. And Touriga Nacional, it was one of them. So I think it bodes well for Portugal and also for Touriga Nacional itself.
Yeah, of course. It's Bordeaux, you know, it's biggest spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
If you have Touriga Nacional in Bordeaux, maybe next year you have Touriga Nacional in a lot of places in the world.
I think it brings more attention to the variety. And maybe link to the question here from Sergio. Hello, Sergio. Does the aging potential varies a lot for regions where the variety is cultivated? Basically, what's the aging potential and how does it vary?
It's a high potential of, look at the wine you taste from Cortes de Cima, it's the vintage is?
2015, and he's drinking beautifully. I this is 5 years old. I described part of the wine. What I didn't describe is it's beginning to give some notes of leather and wet earth and spices. It's beginning to age it. Wonderful.
It's beginning. Look at we don't have a lot of grapes make that with that potential. It's normal. Why? Normally we have some analytical conditions in the grapes to give that. The polyphenolic maturation is very high, for example. The acidity it's high. The pH is down. Everything it's very well to potential to aging very well. It's normal. You taste a wine from Douro, the Touriga Nacional from with 10 years in bottle. It's wow. It's young. Yeah.
And we're talking about longevity, and there's another question here which is interesting, and I should have mentioned at the beginning. Because Touriga Nacional is part of some of the best, it's vital in port production. It makes exceptionally, as Paulo suggested, exceptional blend component for red wines. But we're not going to talk too much, but it's worth just mentioning. It makes some of the best rosé wines of Portugal.
Yeah, of course.
And also, I've tasted some exceptionally good sparkling wines as well. So sparkling rosé, as well as red wine in port and so on. So it's a very versatile variety.
Yeah, and white wines also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
we have some examples.
Not many I've tasted, and it's good.
We have some examples in Portugal. I remember 2 producers now. We have Touriga Nacional white wine, Blanc from Noir, of course. It's a curiosity wine. And the rosé, it's amazing because look at you know rosé. We want freshness, we want fruit, we want floral, and Touriga Nacional give that. It's fresh, it's floral. Give that, of course.
Another question here from Luis. How do you compare Touriga Nacional to Touriga Franca? Let's just talk about the profile of the wine. How do you compare those?
I think it's more Touriga Franca. It's more closed, in my opinion. It's not so exuberant. It's more structured. It's more discreet, and Touriga Nacional. It's more exuberant. You know, as I said, 10% of Touriga Nacional in the lot, in the blend, and okay, that have Touriga Nacional. If you put 10% from Touriga Franca, I don't know if you can do, okay, here have Touriga Franca. I don't know. It's more.
So Touriga Franca, in very simple words, Touriga Nacional is more exuberant, more apparent, more floral, more colorful, and Touriga Franca more elegant.
Yeah.
But I like the texture I like very much the texture of Touriga Franca. It's really elegant.
Yeah.
But also don't forget that people who don't know, Touriga Franca, Touriga Nacional is one of the parents of Touriga Franca.
Yeah.
So it's good to highlight that. And I just want to talk about this second wine that I have here, which is from Alves Souza.
Fantastic wine.
It's a fantastic wine. It's a property that this is from 2017 vintage. It's a property they bought in the late 80s. And right off the bat in 1992, he had received a critical acclaim. I think Oz Clarke put him in his top 30 best buys. And it's a wonderful family. Domingos is the fourth generation. Tiago is the fifth. And they make wonderful, wonderful wines.
A true vigneron. Yeah. Fantastic people, fantastic wines.
This is I don't know exactly, but I've been to the property a few times. This is fairly high up, maybe 300, 400 meters high. Fairly old vineyard, 20 years old. Hand harvested, obviously, destamped, and it's fermented in inox, and it's aged in French barrels for 21 months. So mostly 70% of it's old barrels, and only 30% are new. And the wine is very. I want to ask you a question, because this wine is really, it's very elegant. It's very gentle on the nose, very subtle on the nose.
Yeah,
it's got massive concentration on the palate, and there's a question from Sergio earlier on about longevity, and I just remember now from his question and from what I'm tasting in this wine. Paulo, someone mentioned to me before, that sometimes Touriga Nacional, as it ages, behaves a little bit like Pinot Noir. It's very fruit forward and exuberant, and then it shuts down for a few years like Pinot does, and then it comes up.
Yeah,
that's happened. Is that your experience?
That's happened. In Touriga Nacional happened that. Sometimes you open the bottle and you said, "Oh, it's died, no more." And after 1-2 years, you open new bottle and wow, it's amazing. Sometimes Touriga Nacional have some gap in the maturation, the period of maturation, some gap, and growing after that. Happened that in Touriga Nacional. It's true.
Okay. So if you have a few bottles, because this wine here on the palate has got massive concentration with beautiful tannins, lovely acidity. I just find the wine a little bit like very subtle, almost too subtle.
Yeah.
And I think it's just this wine, and it's wonderful. I think it will just get better and better and better. So we have about 10 minutes, and we're going to move to this wine.
I don't know.
You don't know? Tell us a little bit about this wine. And I have a friend of mine who sent me a message today and a picture from Russia. Said I'm going to watch it, and he's got 2010 of this. So I'm a bit jealous. But let's talk about the 2015. Tell us about this wine, Paul.
15. It is a fantastic year. Down in Portugal is one of the best years in the last decade, and 15 it's very well. We have the summer is more cold, more fresh in the summer. Maturation is slowly. I remember we pick the Touriga Nacional in October, in the middle of October. That means high maturation, polyphenolic maturation in the middle of October. Less alcohol, and it's a fantastic balance and between the sugar and the acidity and tannin. It's amazing year, and it's simple. The wine it's from a vine with 18 years old, 80 years old.
Is it maybe I don't know, but is this planted? Is this from a very old, 80 years old? You mentioned. Yeah. Is it mixed planted that you just picked some Is
Yeah,
that it?
it's a crazy work.
It's a field blend that you select
Yeah,
especially
it's
for this one.
the field
Wow.
blend,
Okay.
but we just pick Touriga Nacional. We start with Oliveira in 2009, and
Okay.
the first time it is the idea. It is okay. Let's try from old vine, very old vine. The difference between Touriga Nacional from a vine with 20 years. It means nothing. It's different. I don't know. Okay, let's go to old vine, just with 4 people because another people don't know what is Touriga Nacional in the middle of 24 different grapes, and we pick some grapes and make the first edition from that wine. It's in my opinion, it's very different from Touriga Nacional from young vineyards, as in my opinion.
There was another question about Down and Doro, but I think if I'm lucky. I have the two ones in front of me, and if I have to describe them, Doro is powerful and concentrated and high in alcohol, but very good underpinning freshness. And the Down is elegance. Again, beautiful acidity, but very really elegant. And I don't notice any oak at all.
No,
I know it's aged in oak, but
yeah, but you don't.
it's not.
That is the reason I said a few minutes ago. I use new barrels in the Touriga Nacional because it's amazing. You don't feel the strong oak in that wine. Touriga Nacional, it's something like hit the oak. It's amazing. But that wine have 1 year in the oak.
What do you how long? What is the oldest Vinho Oliveira you have,
Well,
and how is it tasting?
the first edition from Old Vines, it is
Yeah.
2009. I make a couple months ago a taste from all vintage we make from 2009 until that vintage, and in my opinion, the best is 2009, the best vintage. But maybe more 10 years, I said 2010. Maybe more 10 years, I said 2011. I don't know. I don't know. But have absolutely very good capacity to aging very well.
But I tell you, I'm so lucky. I've got three wines here. They're different, but they're all extremely high quality. So it's and I'm not taking.
Only a fantastic grape can do that. Don't have a lot of grapes. You have in your table three different wines from three different regions, three different terroirs, absolutely different, and it's a fantastic wine. Give me one grape to give that quality. It's not usual. It's not usual.
So what is necessary for Tourigans now to gain more notoriety in the world, for people to go and buy more Touriga? What do we need to do?
You know, Portugal started a few years ago to internationalization. Okay, the wines from Portugal, it's very recent. Because in the past, the consumer of the wines in Portugal, it's from Portuguese market. It's very recent, that movement today, exportation, the wines from Portugal to the world. We are very young yet. Maybe, I'm sure about that. I believe in a couple of years, we have the spotlights inside of Portugal, and for example, with Bordeaux, Touriga Nacional, it's a good example, and I believe another regions in the world copied the wines from Portugal, and Touriga Nacional, it is easy to copy it because the character of Touriga Nacional work very well in any place in the world. I believe it's possible in a couple of years you can find a lot of Touriga Nacional. I believe in that.
And we'll have 5 minutes. Very quick question is an important question. Taking into account climate change, what is the future for Touriga Nacional in Portugal?
Well, it's a good. It's not the worst grape we change with climate. Why? Normally, Touriga Nacional wants warm, want some place with warm. Actually, for example, you can see the wines in Douro or Alentejo are very well. Our regions, both regions, it is very warm regions, and we don't you don't feel sober maturation in that wines. And for example, in Down, we don't put in the past Touriga Nacional exposition by North because we need more warm from Touriga Nacional. We don't put Touriga Nacional in fresh place in Down. We need warm to Touriga Nacional, and that means because in the future we have a lot of warm in the summers, and that is maybe in Down you can find, for example, Touriga Nacional in the next 10 years exposition by North, for example, and is not the worst grapes with the changed climate. It's because needs and like warm.
Good. Paulo, thank you very, very much for your
It's a pleasure to me.
amazing answers. Thank you, all of you. I know there are people mostly from Europe, there are people from Brazil, from all over. So thanks for your questions. So this was the first of a series of 4 masterclasses. We're going to do one every other week. So the following week it will be a white variety, and we'll be all sharing which variety will be, which wines, and who the speaker will be. But for now, Paulo, thank you very, very much, and
It's
I hope you guys enjoy Touriga Nacional.
It's a pleasure. Fantastic grape from Portugal, Touriga Nacional.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. Bye.